Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh, man, I say it every single week. You know what? It's going to be a great show. I am telling you, I can guarantee that this show is going to be another great show. And how do I know? How do I know that? Well, I rose up. Okay. Okay, I know, cheesy. Okay, listen, the book's called Rise Up, but I got the authors here. It's not often, right, everybody, that I get both authors if they're co-authored a book, and I got both of them today. Ali Grovue, hopefully I said that right. Did I say that right? Grovue. Say it again.
Grovue.
Grovue. Okay, good. And then I hopefully will never have to say the last name again. Just call you Ali. And then Mike Watson, of course, who is with us too. Both of Ignite. I'm just telling you what this book is. I said this to them when we were on the show, and I'm going to be writing this in my review on Amazon. This is 100 pages of power-packed leadership habits that every human being needs to absolutely read and intake and digest. And you need to apply this to your life. I'm just telling you. You know this show and you know me, and I have there's three core values for me: attitude, effort, or excellence, and then resilience, right? That you are in control of at all times. This book is a book about resilient leadership. And let's face it, folks, in the last couple of years, we have been through turbulent times. And you can make the argument, times are always turbulent. You're correct, which is why this book is for every person at all times. It's called Rise Up, Leadership Habits for Turbulent Times. It is going to be outstanding. But before we get to them, let's do what we do every week, right? And I walk you through the 4 areas of your life and see how your training is going, right? If somebody could talk about training, and it's Ali Grovue. Grovue, she would tell you, as a former Navy, in the Canadian Navy, she would tell you that training is important in all the areas: physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The fact of the matter is, folks, I've interviewed special operations forces people on the show, male and female. I have interviewed generals on the show, and they've all said the same thing. If you are not growing in these areas, you're dying. That's just the fact. And the truth of the matter is, we need to be evaluating ourselves every week, every day even. Are you growing? And so physically, here's how we do this. We go to scale of 1 to 10, 1 being my training is awful, 10, my training is outstanding, 5 is average. So physically, here's what I'm asking you. If you were to evaluate yourself on eating right, getting enough exercise, drinking enough water, and getting enough sleep, and you were to put those all together and you were to say, in the last 7 days, this is my number, what number would you give yourself? Right now, listen, here's the deal. If the number is low, let's say it's below 5, let's say it's a 3. Right? I don't want you to get upset about that. What I want you to do is that's your starting point. And what I want you to start thinking about is, what can I do right now to change that? Right? And you don't need to go from a 3 to a 10. I just want you to get from maybe a 3 to a 3.5. Right? What could you do? What could you change right now? Maybe it's getting outside and walking. Maybe it's, listening to this show with your ear pods on, right? And taking a walk, or walking the dog a little extra. Or maybe it's just drinking a little extra water. It could be something so simple, getting your hand out of the bag of chips. That might help you too, right? All right, so there's your first number. Second number is your intellectual number, your mental number, right? The fact of the matter is, most of us like to be couch potatoes and like to have things come at us rather than being active participants in our intellectual growth. The fact of the matter is, we have 2 halves of the brain, a right half and a left half, and that one's creative and one's logical. And we need to feed both halves and be an active participant in doing that. One way to do that is read a book. Read a book. Or if you listen to books, you know what? Take notes, right? But you know what? There's other ways to do it. Learn a foreign language, learn another instrument, do something. What are you doing to grow in your knowledge of your business? What have you done lately to actively participate? So a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself in that area? Okay. Third area is emotional. And you know what? Daniel Goleman has written so much on emotional intelligence and emotional quotients. And the truth is, we make it very simple on this show. Here's how I evaluate you. 1 is, how well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? And then 2, how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of others? Right? If you were to give yourself a score of 1 to 10, what would that be like for you? Right? Because you are in control of your emotions, by the way. Right? You make a choice. I used to tell my psychology students when I was teaching at universities, I used to tell them, you know what, you could kick me in the shin, right, as hard as you want, and I still have a choice of the response I'm going to make back to you, right? Because we all have the 100% rule, right? I'm 100% responsible for what I say. I'm 100% responsible for what I do, but I'm also 100% responsible for how I react to whatever you do. That's the 100% rule. And the truth is, when it comes to tap into other people's emotions, right, and understanding them, that requires us to do some active listening. Gosh, they talk about that in that book too. This book too. Kind of interesting. Yeah. And then finally, the spiritual area. And some of you will say, I'm not real spiritual, Jay. I'm really not. But you know what? We all live by faith. We really do. You woke up this morning, you drank that cup of coffee and it wasn't poisonous. You believed that it wasn't going to be poisonous. So you still put it in your mouth, didn't you? Right. When you got into your car, you believed that it was going to start. When you walked across the street, you believed that the cars were going to stop on the street according to the light as you walked across. We live by faith regularly. But also there's a second thing, is what gives you peace in the midst of your chaos, right? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? Is it something else? And is it working for you? And then what would you need to do to change it? So what number would you give yourself? These 4 areas are like the tires in your car, right? If the areas are low, right, what happens? Your car veers and it doesn't work as well. And if they're all too low, right, the car is working too hard and you don't get the most, and you're not efficient. You aren't doing what you need to do. But if your tire's at the right level, the car runs right, it's smoother, it helps you get to where you want to go. And speaking of 2 people who have their tires inflated to the right level, first is Ali Grovue, is a senior consultant at Ignite Management Services. She's an expert in organizational strategy and leadership development. Ali has served as a clean tech COO, nonprofit executive director, and an officer in the Royal Canadian Navy. Ali completed a degree with honors in organizational behavior from the University of British Columbia and leadership coaching training at Harvard University. Mike Watson, who is also joining us, is the president at Ignite Management Service. He's on a mission to change how business is done by encouraging leaders to adopt the habits of resilient leadership. He's embraced a journey of pursuing the best version of himself and helps leaders to do the same, to be more inclusive, inquisitive, and humble. Mike's personal goal is to make the world a better place, one interaction at a time, and I agree with that 100%. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, and welcome for the first time, and hopefully not the last, Ali Grovue, and also Mike Watson. Welcome to A New Direction.
Thanks for having us, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
You're very, very welcome. All right, so the book is outstanding. Let's dig right into this book. I am excited to talk about this. I know, Ali, you wrote the preface or introduction. Mike wrote the preface. You wrote the introduction. The thing that you jump right out says this book will help you be a better leader, a leader capable of creating resilient teams and organizations, and a leader who inspires people to be the best versions of themselves in pursuit of common goal. Ali, that's a pretty strong statement. Out of a bold statement to say almost a guarantee. So let's talk about that. You're real confident about this book. I happen to agree with you, by the way, but talk about your confidence when you about why as resilient leaders, and why this book in particular.
Oh, what a great starting point. I go back to one of the first statements you made on this episode, that every human being needs to read it and apply it to make their lives better. This is really, for me, a book about self-awareness and personal development. Yes, it's a leadership book, but it's also a personal development book. And these habits can be used and applied really by anyone to make their lives better and improve their interactions with others, and really fulfill their potential. Particularly relevant to leaders, where we believe leadership really is about lifting others, and how can you make others be the best that they can be in pursuit of common aims in a leadership or organizational context. And we have seen through our work where leaders are incredibly strong and where they're weak. And there have been these patterns and themes along the way that have led us to the habits that we talk about in the book. And we've seen it in action. We've seen the impact that it really has on the individual leaders, the people that they lead in their organizations, when they take steps. Just like you said, Jay, it's not about going from, a 2 to a 10. This is about what are the small habits, steps, continuous improvement to continue to seek to be better for ourselves and the people around us. And we've seen it work in our work with our clients.
So Mike, you wrote chapter 1 called Entitled Resilient Leadership. And I am a big person on resilience, because I believe that resilience is critical to who we are. And I believe that you do the same thing. Let's talk about how you envision resilient leadership. When you say resilient, what do you mean? when it comes to being resilient and leadership?
Yeah, so resilience is commonly defined as the ability to withstand or face adversity and pick yourself up and move forward. And in this turbulent world that we're in, be it COVID, the war in Ukraine, the inflationary environment, these external forces that are buffeting us on a continuous basis, resilience is the ability to get hit by that anonymous force and get back up again.
You ask a question right away in chapter 1, Mike, and it's a great question. And you say, and I quote, "So, why aren't more leaders and more organizations resilient?" So help us out here, Mike. Why aren't they more resilient? Why aren't leaders and organizations resilient?
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to, Jay, what we have seen in so many leaders, conditioned over generations, that the leader has been conditioned to be the smartest, the strongest, the fastest, right, more often than not. People think this role of leadership is the job title. And they think that if the job, and that's allocating assets. I refer to it as the chess game. They think leadership is the chess game and the job title. And because I have this job title, that allows me to say I'm a leader. This is a mindset issue. And there are so many that aren't there because they don't have the mindset. And Ali alluded to it when she was speaking. A leader has to understand that their job is to lift people. We refer to it as enabling people individually and collectively to be the best of themselves in pursuit of something noble. That's a mindset issue that so many leaders don't have. They are focused that my leadership is the bottom line. My focus is operational efficiency. My focus is allocation of capital. And they miss out the human element of it, which is the lifting of people to be the best versions of themselves. And honestly, that's the single biggest gap that we have seen in the companies we work with and the leaders we work with. It's that mindset and definition of what is a leader.
So I'm going to ask both of you, and whoever feels like they want to jump in on this, I'm going to do this because mindset has come up, and it was something that you and I, all three of us, have kind of threw out at each other before we even came on the show. That we talked about this mindset issue, which I believe could be number 7, habit, because I believe mindset is a habit. And one of the things that occurred to me as I was reading through the book, because you mentioned mindset through every one of the 6 habits, I am curious because I think sometimes leaders, when they're young, are willing to listen to everybody. Most often. I think that they're willing to go, okay, I need to learn. But then the leaders get to a point, I believe sometimes, and you even talk about, I think it's Anthony in the book, where leaders get a mindset that says, I don't have any more to learn, or, I don't need you to come in and tell me what to do. Right? I mean, that's kind of, I kind of wonder if there's this thing where over time, or maybe there's something else that I'm missing here, where our mindset gets just wrong on some level. What's your thoughts?
Ali, I see that smile on your face. You're ready with this one.
I am. I might be a little bit all over the place, but just some things that jumped into my head when you were speaking, Jay. So mindset is a habit. I love that. You're absolutely right. Totally agree. We speak about, there's kind of 2 pieces to the mindset puzzle that we get into a little bit in the book. One is what Mike spoke about of really truly embracing what it means to be a leader. And people have either because they have, for many people, a lack of role models of what great leadership really is and looks like with that sort of people-centered or human-centered approach. A lot of people have not come up in organizations where they have that type of leadership modeled. So understanding what leadership is and really embracing this notion of leadership being about ultimately lifting others in pursuit of common goals or aims. Then the other side of the mindset piece is the motivation and the purpose around it. So why should they personally care? Because it's hard work. Leading is hard work, and becoming a better leader or a better person and learning new habits is hard work, and you have to be intentional, and it's a lifelong journey, right? It doesn't end. So you have to have a pretty strong motivating purpose or motivation to see you through those difficult times. So we do talk a bit in the book about that importance of identifying and understanding and connecting with your underlying motivation for wanting to be a leader, with the understanding of like philosophically what leadership means. So then to your question of, does that change over time as people become more senior or older? Do they become potentially more closed down? Arrogance for sure sets in. So there's lack of humility. We kind of start to believe our own press. And I did this recently too, right? Like it happens to all of us. You get really good at what you're doing and you get a little further and further away from earth. So I think that arrogance does set in when people have succeeded and achieved over their careers, and why it's increasingly or even more important to look back to those habits, and humility, inquisitiveness being a couple of those that help, keep you grounded. And then again, the expectation of what leadership is, where I think there are young folks that maybe a bit more instinctively feel like they know what leadership should be about, whether they've seen it role modeled or not. But there are still young people who come up in organizations with certain cultures that still have a different view of what leadership is, and more of that chess game. My job as a leader is financial performance and so forth. So I don't know if there's much of a junior senior gap on the like what is leadership mindset piece, but definitely the growth of arrogance over time, particularly for high achieving people.
That's beautiful, by the way. That's absolutely awesome. I really don't have in my head. I want to believe that sometimes, as leaders, we get stubborn. We could get stubborn in our own ways. Sometimes it's lack of humility or arrogance, but sometimes I just wonder if we just don't like change, and so you don't want to hear another opposing point of view. And I think you mentioned this in the book, that we don't want to hear an opposing point of view. And so we'd rather just go ahead and do it without, talking to our other constituents, employees, or other people in our businesses that could help us actually make that change happen, because change is inevitable, right? I mean, that's going to happen to us. So how do we, negotiating that, I think, becomes difficult. Mike, your thoughts?
Oh, I'm smiling to myself. One of my favorite books was written by a professor at Harvard, Tom DeLonge, and it's called Flying Without a Net. And he talks to that exact thing, Jay. He talks about how we get stuck in our ways. And there's an element to it. Type A personalities who've achieved success, they've had great significance in their life. And over time, people laugh at their bad jokes and they listen to them as if they're experts in everything, just because of the positional authority that they have. So they're in this mindset of, I've really got this. And they become very, very good at a current way of doing business, and call that the old way of doing business. And they're very, very good at it. It's brought them great success. Type A personalities hate it when they're not good at something. And so now the world's changing, and they're getting all this input from these young people that are saying, oh, we got to get on social channels, and we've got to do this. We got to be digital. And we're sitting there saying, well, what's wrong with the way we're doing it? We're good at that. But in today's world, the old way of doing business by definition is wrong, okay? Because the world is changing. If you haven't adapted, it's wrong. So we've become good at the wrong things. So it takes great courage to accept that we're going to go to a new way of doing business that we're not going to be all that good at. So we're going to become bad at the right things. That takes courage. And then you talked about habits and the formation of habits. Repeat. It takes great fortitude to stick with it, to become good at it. I think as we get on in our careers, we get stuck in that upper left. If you looked at that as a 2x2 grid, we get stuck in that upper left, good at the wrong things, good at the old way. And it's really hard to shift down into the things we're not going to be so good at, because I got a bunch of ego and I've got this far doing what I do. I don't want to be not good at something. So you see how that really gets in the way.
Oh, absolutely. You can absolutely see it. Resilience is just so critical. And I think the one thing that for people who are listening, who are out there, it's easy to quit. It's hard to be resilient, but it's really a choice. And I was thinking about you, Allie, when you were in boot camp, and you talked about how there were some people who quit during boot camp because it's easy to do, isn't it?
Yeah, to me, that was a really fascinating experience for many reasons, but that to me was that message around the motivation and the importance, in order to be resilient, being connected to why you're doing it in the first place. Because if you don't have that connection to it and a strong motivator for doing what you're doing or overcoming what you're overcoming, it's going to be really hard to keep going, because for what? And the difference in the people that I saw that did leave, it was clear kind of through that process that they didn't have that deep intrinsic motivation for why they were there. They were potentially external pressures or expectations of why they decided to do that. But ultimately, a week in, they thought, what the heck am I doing here? This is not what I want. And it's the people who had really thought it through. They knew why they were doing it. And there was no question of quitting from the beginning. And that goes back to that clarity of purpose or motivation.
Their names are Ali Grovue and Mike Watson. The book is titled Rise Up, Leadership Habits for Turbulent Times. You are listening to them here on A New Direction. Folks, Epic Physical Therapy, my physical therapist, I think they should be yours too, by the way. Whether you're recovering from an injury, surgery, suffering from everyday aches and pains, or maybe you're a professional athlete who just wants to improve. Look, the elite team at Epic Physical Therapy will provide you with a customized treatment plan specifically for you. So when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors, she's been helping people all over the world for over 35 years. She does that because she's independently operated and owned. She is unaffiliated with a national company, so she has made relationships with the best realtors in your area. So listen, when you're ready to buy or sell your home, list it, whatever, and you're looking for who should I go with, start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. She can actually help you in your area. It's lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And Hint Water, the official beverage of DBTV. That's right. You might be watching us on Apple TV or your Samsung TV or a number of ways on TV. Or maybe you're watching us cable in all over the world. Listen, Hint is the official beverage of DBTV. I drink it. I think you should too. It is delicious. No sugar. It's absolutely fantastic. And we're back here on A New Direction with Ali Grovue and Mike Watson, co-authors of the book Rise Up, Leadership Habits for Turbulent Times. And while I've got Ali here, chapter 2, Ali, was something you wrote, and motivation, and you've alluded to it twice. So far, you've alluded to it twice about the fact that motivation for you, and when you talk about motivation, you have talked about it in terms of saying you've got to know your purpose. And of course, we all know that Simon Sinek has been famous for saying know your why, right? Before we get into it. But you have said something here that I think is important. Without purpose, a leader will surely falter in those instances that require resilience, and you've led that. So let's talk about purpose, because I think sometimes people go, I don't even know what my purpose is, but purpose can change, and it may not be what you think it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Purpose can change and often does throughout our lives. And I think people, particularly young people who are more tuned into this perceived need for purpose and are not clear on their purpose, are often feeling a bit lost of why is this not clear to me? Purpose you discover over time and over your life and through your experiences, and your sense of purpose or what you're doing things for, what motivates you, can change over time as well. So revisiting that is important, and fine-tuning it or refining it as you go through life experience is important. So as a leader, as you enter leadership roles and continually as you move through your career, that importance of asking yourself, first setting aside your leadership role, from a life perspective, what do you care about? What matters to you? What does success look like to me in the long term for my life? Because what you want to be able to do is see a connection between your choice to lead and to be a leader in the pursuit of what matters to you in your life. And if you can create that connection, it gives you that strong sense of purpose of why you're leading and why you're in the role that you're in, and how this is going to help you to achieve your life aims, and live in alignment with your values. Because leadership is hard, and to be a good leader is really hard, because it's so much about people, and leading people is not easy, as I'm sure most of the audience knows. So being really clear and being able to remind yourself in those moments of, wait, why am I doing this? Right, that's why I'm doing this. And it can really, I know it works well for me. I really quickly can tune into that and say, oh yeah, that's right, that's what this is about, and how it all connects. So it's really quite powerful. Mike, you want to add anything?
Well, go ahead, Mike.
Jason.
No, go ahead, Mike. I'm
Well,
here.
you know, I love the question. It's what happens? What happens? And things are going to get hard. They're going to get really, really hard. And what are you going to choose to do when they get hard? You know, take your ball and go home? Like, because that's what a lot of people will do. And I think about people early in their career, and oftentimes they haven't had the time to think about their defining purpose. They come into their career and they're starting out without that defining purpose. And they get into that first job and their boss is a jerk, and they're struggling, and they got to work long hours, and they're wondering why. And so often they bolt. Off they go. And what's behind that? That same person might regret it later. You know, after the fact, if you have that defining purpose, I know I'm going to stick through, I'm going to walk through this mud, because it's going to be worth it at the end. And the thing that we try to impress upon these young leaders is the success, the celebration can only be real if you've had to work hard and overcome obstacles to get there. Why do they celebrate so hard when they win the Stanley Cup or the NBA playoffs or the Super Bowl? It's because they know the work it took to get there. Right. So the success is huge. But in the absence of that defining purpose, when the going gets tough, I'm going to take my ball and go home.
You know, the three questions, Ali, that you wrote here: what do I want? Why do I want it? And who do I want it for? I just think are so powerful, because I think they're the questions that people should ask themselves, whatever they're doing. They don't, even if you're not in a what we would call a traditional leadership role. I would say, even if you're evaluating your life or your career, I think these questions are really powerful. What do I want? Why do I want it? And who do I want it for? Powerful, right, Ali?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in the book, but another question after what do I want is, what do I really want? So it's getting under the surface of, a lot of people haven't done this sort of deep, intentional kind of introspection through their lives. And it's a habit as well. It's a practice, and you get better at it. And your self-awareness grows through the process. But what do I want? Hold on a minute. What do I really want? Let's be really, really honest about it, honest with myself. Why do I want it? What is this really about? And who do I want it for is about really checking two pieces. Am I really checking that I'm doing this for myself? Because there's a lot of expectations that come, whether it's from parents or societal expectations or other things you think you should be doing. So who do I want it for? Let's check that we're doing this to serve the right audience. And also, is this in service of others? Is there something in my life that is in service to others? Simply because we've found that meaning, fulfillment, purpose, part of that does from a connection to feeling like you've impacted others, or through strength of relationships and how that impacts life. So, and I completely agree, this is not just for leaders, and this is true for so much in the book. But leadership role or not, the power of asking yourself these questions and revisiting them through life. Some people go their whole lives and they never ask these questions. I had a client that I worked with last year, and we were doing some individual development planning. And he was probably 55, getting close to 60. And he said, this is the first time that I've ever asked myself these questions. And he said, I wish I had done this sooner. It's just incredible how the clarity it can bring to life. And they don't have to be complicated exercises.
Right. Mike, I'm going to ask you this question because I think sometimes as men, I'm just going to say this as men, our egos can get in the way because we're so driven to oftentimes to not want to look at ourselves deeply. We don't, in my psychological professional experience, men are far more reluctant to want to go deep and want to strip away the outside and really look deeply at themselves. I know that for you and that for some of the case studies even that you've seen, that this is a difficult thing sometimes for us, is to strip away ourselves and take a deep look and say, all right, I have to look I think you even said it, you got to look yourself in the mirror. It's tough, isn't it?
It's really tough. Like you can't say that enough. Like that, when you fall down, male or female, you fall down, you're broken. Like there's moments in our lives when we will be broken, and it's really, really hard. Where do you go from there? And I can only speak for myself. I'm not a psychologist that can tell you the gender differences, but I know that I was raised to be strong, right, to not cry, to contain emotions. Success was financial primarily, so it was achievement, it was accomplishments. Right. So there wasn't a lot of talk of fulfillment. There wasn't a lot of talk about the nobility of the cause, but rather to be seen a certain way. So, Jay, when I had my first career collapse, I'm 35 years old. I'm at my first executive role, and I'm a pretty smart guy, and the strategy was great. And I know because ultimately it succeeded. But it wasn't working when I launched it. And I was the COO, and this group, they didn't embrace it. And there was one trusted advisor I had in this organization, financial service. I said, what's going on? Like, why aren't they embracing it? She looked me right in the eye and she said, Mike, they can't stand you. You've got to be right. And I just got smacked between the eyes. I still get emotional every single time I tell that story. And I'm a good guy. I'm a good person. I know I'm a good human being, but I was portraying something completely different, which had been conditioned since childhood. So now what? Faced with catastrophic failure, what do I choose to do? Double down on being a jerk? Because that was an option.
Right.
But instead, it was about recognizing that you got to demonstrate that you care for people. And that was actually the very first sort of major lesson in leadership that evolved into this book that Ali and I put together, was this construct of I care about you as a person first. And the other piece, we're all equal under the sun. I may have a different job title than you have, but as human beings, we're all equal under the sun. So I got to show that care. But back to your question, it's that, for me, it was the conditioning from childhood. And I think a lot of men are in the same boat.
Well, so I'm saying this, it's not that this can't apply to women as well. I'm just saying that, in the psychological research, it's typically men have a more difficulty being able to go deeper. I will also say that it seems that it appears in the research as well, that regardless of gender, the more successful we are, the less likely we are willing to look at ourselves. Ali, your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. I'm stuck on this sort of gender difference. I know none of us maybe have all of the answers on it, but I wonder how much. So there could be some actual innate differences. There could be expectations put on men versus women from childhood and how they're raised around how they should be and show up in the world. But then getting into this sort of how things might change through success and achievement, and men having been in roles of senior leadership for a lot longer than women.
Sure.
And still to this day, when you look at the number of men in senior leadership positions, it's still more so than men. So I wonder also what that impact has potentially had on how maybe how willing men are to change, self-reflect, and so forth, kind of just based on historical change in business over time.
Yeah, I think success is one of those neutralizers, meaning that I don't think gender matters. It's just that the more successful we become, I wonder if all of a sudden we start believing our own headlines, and I don't have to look at myself anymore because I'm doing everything right.
Yeah. Oh, it happens. And it happens. I'm thinking of myself again. It can happen subconsciously, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, your confidence grows, your competence grows. People are telling you how great you are. You're doing great work. You're fulfilled in the work that you're doing, and you can become less tuned in to what other people think, less willing to ask questions, and more sure of the path that you think is right, and less willing to seek out the perspectives of others to inform that. I don't know if I reference this in the book, but when I'm working with groups of leaders and we're talking about inquisitiveness, which is one of the habits, I talk about inquisitiveness, and then I say, so why aren't more leaders asking questions? Why aren't leaders asking questions if we know how powerful this is? And the responses are always super fun. One is, I'm just too busy. Like it takes time. It takes time to go out and ask people what they think. Very similar to that is it slows me down. Like I got places to go, I got decisions to make, and this is just going to slow things down. And there's personalities of certain, achievement-oriented folks who kind of tend to be in leadership roles that feel that more. But the number one that I get when people will admit it, what if I don't like what they say? You brought this up, Jay, earlier, and they say it with this very sheepish look on their faces. What if I don't like what they say?
Oh my gosh. Okay, Allie, you got to stop. Just so you know, when she talks about working with leaders, I'm one of them that Allie works with. So she asked me this question, why don't you listen more? Which I have to accept immediately as a person who don't listen as well as I could. So it's a humble moment. And then she digs deeper with me and deeper. And I look at her and I say, because I don't want the answer.
I don't want to know. Because
I don't want to know.
Take the lid off, and now you have to do something about it.
Because it's too damn hard. I've worked hard enough already. Stop it.
You have to act. You have to actually, now you've asked and they've said something, and now you actually have to do something.
Yeah, I know. So what's happening, Jay, is you're watching the Allie and Mike show here, and this is what happens in our office. And she's this brilliant, gifted leadership coach. And so I know I got to listen. But I'm a 55-year-old man who's stuck in his ways, and I like it the way it was. And why are you doing this to me? Sorry, I went on a tangent.
I love that. This is what the show is supposed to be. This is beautiful. I wanted that to keep going. I didn't want it to stop. That's awesome. Because it's so true. It's real. That interchange right there is exactly why people listen and watch and are going, this is exactly the thing I don't want to deal with. They don't. And Mike, it goes into chapter 3 on trust. And part of it is, it's because what you shared right there was authentic. That's authentic Mike Watson. But we have a tendency to not want to be authentic in our leadership.
So true. So true. Yeah, when the book was published, my little brother called me. And he said, Mike, I love the book. He's a principal in a high school. He says, I love the book. He says, but why were you so hard on yourself? Like, why? Those stories aren't true. Well, actually, yes, they are. But why were you so hard on yourself? And I said, Marco, come on, man. Like, I'm confident in who I am, but if I'm not able to demonstrate that it's okay to make mistakes, how can I expect the person that picks up this book to accept their own foibles, their own challenges? Like, Mark, it was critically important, I said to him, that in this book we share our own challenges in life.
Right. Authenticity is another one of those core, just a core for me, is being authentic and getting people to be authentic, because I think sometimes in leadership, and Allie, you can speak to this too, but I think sometimes in leadership, it's easy to show one face to your people and then go away and you're not that person at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it ties right into trust and what builds trust. And a couple of those pieces are consistency and character. So this piece around character, do people do they believe in your moral values or sort of who you are and your integrity as a person? And part of that is, do you see who they really are? Do you actually know what their values are and what they stand for? And does that show up consistently? Consistency in how you show up in the workplace is about like mood regulation and knowing that who will show up when they come to talk to you or come to talk to their leader. But tied into that, and I don't know that we really get into it in the book, like foundationally, what do you need to do to be able to demonstrate those things and therefore build trust? Is you have to bring yourself to work. Yes, you need to do it with all of the great habits of leadership, with discipline and care and all these pieces that may not come naturally to you. Authenticity isn't permission to be a jerk. So it's are you bringing who you are, what you really stand for, your values, and showing that vulnerability of kind of putting yourself out there, which helps to build trust with the people who work for you.
You're listening to the Ali and Mike show here on A New Direction. Aren't they great? You know, the book's called Rise Up, Leadership Habits for Turbulent Times, right here on A New Direction. Folks, listen, my two sponsors, Epic Physical Therapy, you know what? I love them. They're great. Heidi and Andrew, the owners, are fantastic, as well as all the staff members. Their facilities offer the most advanced top-of-the-line equipment, the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill, the Normatec compression sleeves, my favorite, the Game Ready, ice and compression all at the same time. But they're also certified in those comprehensive cutting-edge treatments like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping, and that's just a few. Look, when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, don't look any further. Look at epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Kraft and Team Realtors for more than 35 years, serving the world. But you know what? Her very first customer from 1985 still comes back to this day. And as with the thousands of people that she's worked with, they all say the same thing. She's a legend when it comes to customer service. So listen, when you want to sell your home or buy your next home, start with Linda Kraft at Team Realtors. It's really easy. It's just lindakraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Ali Grovue and Mike Watson, co-authors of the book Rise Up, Leadership Habits for Turbulent Times. Are you guys having a good time on this show?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, good, because I love having you on here. I just this is so much fun for me. I'm sitting here. Mike, I want to just, before we move on from trust, I just want to hit one thing that you said in this chapter. You in this chapter, there's the 5 C's of trust, and just in case people want to know, it's care, communication, character, and consistency, and competence. But I want to just talk about care when it comes to trust, because you said, and I quote, "Care matters more than any of the other 5." Talk about the importance of care and trust.
Yeah, if someone doesn't care about me, like think about this in real simple terms. If I know deep down this person doesn't care about me, how am I possibly going to trust them when the chips are down? Like it's just so foundational, so basic. When we wrote the book, Jay, we had a clinical counselor, a revered clinical counselor, look at every word in the book, and he zeroed in on the care factor. And in his clinical counseling, when care is not demonstrated, trust is broken. And it's so hard to get it back. And this was my story in my early career. I did care, but I didn't show it. Now you think about our COVID world, and this is where it really hits home. In this COVID world where people are suffering, and I mean suffering in very real terms, the wear down factors of COVID. The sense of isolation, the disintegration. We need to be integrated to be whole. And it's been disintegrated, which of course, put those two together, it's disintegration. And our well-being has diminished over time. Our cognitive functioning is in decline. Well, what's the biggest thing that the leader can do is care enough to understand that this person's going through something rough. Everyone we deal with is going through something rough. And we have to make some tough decisions. Again, I'll come back to COVID, because the decisions we make, some, by definition, some aren't going to like. They're not going to like it because they have different views of what COVID reality is. And some aren't going to like it. If you make the decision and they don't think you care about them, you have put a wall up between you and that person that who knows how you're going to break that down over time, because their health and well-being is at stake. So it absolutely care is the most important factor to build trust and to enable trust. When it's broken, you're done.
I can agree more. I notice we're getting a little feedback. Does somebody have their speak off? Looks like we're getting it. Okay, that stopped it. Okay, awesome. So Ali, I want to talk about inquisitiveness. You've already led us into it a little bit. You say resilient leaders are curious. They know how to ask questions that lead them to consider new ideas is one of the things. But you make a distinction here in this chapter between the difference between inquisitiveness and being curious. Help us understand those two.
So I'm a very curious person. I've always had a high degree of curiosity. And to me, this is about an interest in information, following trails, wanting to learn about something, being interested in, a variety of subjects and kind of wanting to go down that rabbit hole to learn more about it. Or for some people, it might be about being curious about others, wanting to understand other people's lives, what makes them tick. So it's curiosity is this internal drive to learn. That doesn't mean you ask questions. That doesn't mean you're going out and engaging with others for their perspectives. It could be something you do as a solitary pursuit, and you're reading or you're researching, or you're interested, but you don't take the action of going out and asking what people think. And that's really what inquisitiveness, it's the action of going out and asking questions. And the other kind of nuance to it is, what is the purpose or importance of inquisitiveness? One is actually learning and gathering considerations, gathering perspectives. So you're satiating that curiosity and you're gathering information. But the other purpose to it is not just the end being, okay, now I know more and I have no more to consider, which is extremely important, but it's also the act of engaging people and letting them know through that behavior that you care what they think, that their perspective is valued, and that you're actually going to do something with or consider what they're telling you or giving you. So there's really, from a leadership perspective, two, why it's so critical. One, it's demonstrating that you care, that you need others, that you value their perspective, and you're engaging your people in whatever the process is. And the other is just because it's true, you actually will make better decisions if you gather the perspectives of others.
Mike, I know that for oh, we're echoing again. I don't know where that's from. Anyway, and Mike, I know that for you, there's a paradigm at Ignite that you guys have that's part of this inquisitiveness chapter, and it's inform, align, and act. Help us understand how inform, align, and act are part of this whole idea of being, as a resilient leader, we need to be inquisitive.
Yeah, we refer to it as the inform, align, act paradigm, and it's a way of working with groups of people. What we so often see in meetings, Jay, is people walk into the meeting room with their mind made up, and they're going to advocate for their position. In fact, they're often trained to go into meetings to advocate for their position. And we know that the best decisions are made when the perspectives of all the people around the table are brought forward with some level of optimism to identify the best path forward. So what we encourage leaders to do is just step back for a minute and think about this inform stage. No one, please don't put a stake in the ground. Let's inform one another of the issues that are at play, with no one putting a decision place in. So that's gathering perspectives, and that is active curiosity, which is inquisitiveness, and you're now encouraging it in others. And when you're doing this inform, you can create an environment around that table of saying, hey, okay, that was cool, Ali, what you said. Jay, how's that landing with you? You come from you got a different lens on this. So the inform stage is absolutely critical. And if people come in without a preordained notion of what the outcome is going to be, they have learned and grown through this exercise of inform. The next stage is let's align. I do have my biases. I still have, I've come in with some sense of where it needs to go. So the align is, okay, now let's look at the options that we might have. If you're considering options and the path you might go forward, how far apart are we? Let's look at where we are in union, where we are of the same view. Because again, we often in the boardroom context look at where we're different as opposed to where we're aligned. So let's look at these zones in which we are in alignment and call those out. And again, the gaps. So now we're focusing on mitigation of the gaps as opposed to our differences are too broad. So that's with great information, we align around the path forward. And then, of course, the action stage. We leave united in our action. We must leave united in our action. We will not create an opportunity for people to put wedges in. We are marching together and no one can now break us. And this can work with the smallest of decisions and the largest of decisions. So again, bring the group together, practice active curiosity or inquisitiveness, gain the perspectives, then put the business lens on to align around the best path forward based on really good information, and then lock arms in solidarity to move forward together.
Ali, I want to ask you about practicing inquisitiveness, because you wrote in here the challenges with inquisitiveness may seem complex, but we can all develop inquisitiveness, the associated behaviors, including slowing down in order to ask good questions, and then listening intently, which together cultivate trust. Are you hearing an echo?
Not getting an echo, but you're kind of going. Your sound's going in and out.
Well, it's because I'm hearing some kind of speaker on, and I'm hearing myself twice, and it's affecting the way I'm talking.
It might be for me. I could stay muted if that solves the problem. Maybe pass it to Mike.
Well, Mike, can you mute yourself and see what happens if I talk to Ali? Okay, I will try that. Oh, okay. So I'm going to ask the question. Help to practice inquisitiveness, Ali.
Okay, I'm going to try this. If my sound's no good, just cut me off and Mike can jump in for me. Practicing inquisitiveness, yes, it's about habit formation, and it's taking what are those small steps or behaviors that we can integrate into the work that we do daily and start practicing with consistency. And it doesn't need to be complicated or trying to change your personality or behaviors overnight, but identifying some of those small steps. And you gave an example of slow down. When you hear something someone is saying, pause, ask a question, or ask 3 questions before you jump in with your perspective. So really slow down, ask more questions. And it can be a sticky note on your wall that says, ask at least 1 question before moving forward in a conversation. And the more you start to practice that, it will become more natural over time and you'll get better at it.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so we're down to a couple minutes. We're not going to finish the book. I wasn't intending to do that, but anyway. But I do want to get Mike on and talk about humility, because we've talked about it, and I'm a big hockey fan. My wife was a corporate sponsor for the Carolina Hurricanes down here, and we're big, huge hockey fans down here. And of course, you started with the St. Louis Blues winning Stanley Cup in 2019, and manager Doug Armstrong, which is a great story. But let's talk, Mike, about how humility is just so critical to being a resilient leader.
Yeah. First off, I can't succeed if you're not succeeding. The mindset of the leader must be, I can't succeed if you're not succeeding. We tell the story of Doug Armstrong in the book and how he approached leadership. When we interviewed him for the book, his comment was this: great leaders are not hung up on accomplishments, rather they bring the right people around them to make themselves irrelevant. I first met Doug during the 2010 Winter Olympics, gold medal. Canada won the gold medal. And here was this general manager of a major hockey team, and I had a volunteer role. Call me the water boy. And there was one night I took off in the 3 weeks of this Olympic run, because in my real life, I was hosting a group of people at one of the games. And Doug Armstrong, he knew who I was, and he knew that I was driving them around and making sure they got their meals. But he also knew that I had a big night, and it was important for me in my other world to be successful on that night. And he said, Mikey, he says, what you got going on? So I told him that I had the bunch of people coming to a suite, and, you know, it was a bit of a big deal for me. He says, oh, darn, how can we help? How about this? He says, I'm going to bring the boys over. And I said, you don't have to do that. And Doug Armstrong chose to walk over with Kevin Lowe and Wayne Gretzky. No, it wasn't Wayne Gretzky, Kevin Lowe and Ken Holland, some legends of the game, for no other reason than to help me look good with the people that I was entertaining, because he knew I needed to succeed, to be my best for them. That little tiny act, Jay, was just unbelievable in what it did for me. It made me want to go the extra mile. So we tend to get so busy in our day to day that we're not focusing on the people that are doing the work around us. And it's the coaching, the ongoing, the one-on-ones that you're going to have on a regular basis, a weekly basis, where you're listening and probing, and where you're understanding the individual's purpose. Like, Jay, what is your purpose? And are you still on track with that here in your job at Ignite or on a new direction? Are you still aligned? That is connecting you to that person, and they will go that extra mile for mutual benefit. That's one of the big gaps we see. And we talked about, where does the arrogance of leaders as they grow? I've been pondering this since you raised that, because I had to look in the mirror. That was tough. And where does that arrogance come from? And what's the antidote? Because I can guarantee, if you are a leader 55 years of age or older, probably 50 years of age or older, you are at risk of arrogance. You may not be absolutely there, but you are at risk of arrogance. So what is the antidote? Humility is one of the antidotes. I can't succeed if my team doesn't succeed, and my focus, and of course what Ali talked about, active curiosity or inquisitiveness.
That's beautiful. Folks, we've been on an hour, and it's gone really, really fast. Ali, tell folks how they can get a hold of you.
Oh, best way to find me is on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. There's only one of me on there. So just type in my name, Ali Grovue, and you'll find me. Reach out, send me a message, and follow me there.
And Mike, tell people how they get a hold of you.
Yeah, well, you'll find me on LinkedIn as well. You might want to search Mike Watson and Ignite Management, because there are about 432 of me on LinkedIn, if not more, or very simply mwatson@ignitemanagement.ca.
That's awesome. Folks, that's the show. I told you it was going to be great, and it's outstanding, wasn't it? Listen, you're in control of three things in your life: your attitude, your effort, that's your excellence, and your resilience, getting back up again. That's what this book was about. You know what? You're always in control. I know your circumstances can be tough. I know they can be really hard out there, but you still can control all three of those things. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book. It's going to be another great show. And as I say to you all over the world, thank you, and ciao, everybody.